spend a lot of time preaching to families and the importance of marriage and having children and things like that. And I understand, I do. I love families. I love being a part of families. Being a priest allows me to be a part of so many people's families. And like I said, all of my friends, they all have big families now. They're all good Catholic people with lots of kids running around, and I enjoy that. Very rarely, I don't think I've done it in my 5 years, but I'm thinking back, I've never really heard a homily on celibacy. And you may be thinking, oh, well, that applies to you, Father. And that applies to Deacon if something were to happen to Miss Donna. Miss Donna signed off, Deacon can't remarry. I'm sure she was very happy to sign off on that. I just want to talk a little bit about celibacy because it ties with that second reading where Paul is talking about the unmarried man is anxious about things of the world instead of the things of heaven instead of the things of the world. And the unmarried woman is anxious about the things of heaven instead of things of the world. And marriage is a very, very good thing, but Paul's kind of just talking this whole new idea of celibacy. And I got to thinking, it was kind of the first time I heard about celibacy. I can remember being 9 years old, and there was a song that year. It spent about 40 weeks in the Billboard 100 Hot 100 chart. It was by a guy named Marvin Young, probably better known as Young MC. You know the song I'm talking about. Bust a Move was the name of it. It's played at house parties to this day, anytime it comes on. And it had a line in it, and I was thinking about it. It was actually pretty funny because this is pure poetry here. I want to read it to you. You're on a mission and you're wishing someone could cure your lonely condition. Looking for love in all the wrong places. No fine girls, just ugly faces. From frustration, first inclination is to become a monk and leave the situation. But every dark tunnel has a light of hope, so don't hang yourself with a celibate rope. Shakespearean poetry right there, right? He's so frustrated he wants to become a monk. He can't find a girl, but he's saying, there's hope. Don't hang yourself with a celibate rope. That's really the first time I'd heard about the word celibacy. I think Paul would kind of disagree. They have two different visions on what celibacy is. Young MC and Paul hashing it out when they get to heaven one day about what celibacy is. The second time I heard about it was when Monsignor Troncalli, who was my pastor when I was a teenager, set all the boys down in the CCD class, and he started talking to us about priesthood. We were like, yeah, right, old man. You want us to give up girls? When you're a teenager, that's all you're thinking about. I was like, you must be out of your mind. You want us to live an entire life without a family, without getting married, without a girl in our life? And I talk about celibacy because it's a fascinating thing to people when they meet me for the first time. You know, they know something about Catholic priests are not being married, so they come up to me and they're like, hey, so you're a priest, right? Yeah. And this inevitably follows. They were like, you realize you can't get married, right? No. Let me call the Archbishop and get him on the phone right now. He never explained that to me. I've never heard about it in the 10 years of seminary. We didn't live it every single day. They just sprung it on me at the last minute. And they're like, then the next thing is like, do you not like girls? You got any more dumb questions for me? It has nothing to do with liking girls. I love girls, by the way. Y'all are beautiful. Y'all are much more beautiful than we are. And I'm reminded of that every time we have a priest gathering. I'm like, yeah, man, hanging out with these guys, could be out with a beautiful girl right now. But this celibacy thing, it's kind of always at the forefront. And where does it come from and why is it important? Right? Because in the Jewish tradition, right? There's not really, you don't hear much about celibacy. There's a few of them. There's Jeremiah the prophet. There's some of them like that. But for the Jews, your legacy was to have a family. That's how your name got passed on, and that's what was important. You had to get married, and that's why barrenness and all of these things were viewed as a curse, because you were supposed to have children, and that's how you carried on your legacy. But when Christ comes, it takes on a whole new understanding, because it's in light of the resurrection. So there's a lot of celibacy now that's starting to come forward, Paul being one of them. Now, the apostles, and a lot of them are married. They're married priests, that's true. But celibacy takes on a different understanding with Paul. And then you hear, even in what I'm going to do in the Eucharistic prayer today, a lot of the virgins and the martyrs, they're all celibates. And I'm not just saying it just because I'm a priest and I've taken a promise of celibacy, right? And religious order ladies and monks and all of them take promises of celibacy before God. We make that promise. That's not the hard promise, by the way, that I make. The hard promise is obedience. The hard promise is conforming my life to Christ. Celibacy is not as hard as people think it is. But there's an aspect to everybody's life that's going to go through celibacy. And I realized this, somebody kind of brought it to my attention and said, Father, you talk a lot about marriage and the importance of marriage. But there's a lot of people at in Matthew's Gospel, chapter 19, Christ talks about it. There's a lot of people incapable of marriage. The lady was in a bad situation. Her husband was abusive. She left. She was divorced. She's made a promise to live a celibate life the rest of her life. Something I run into more and more now with the gender confusion things and sexuality issues, people that go through same-sex attraction that are living heroically, doing what the church asked them to do, to love in a celibate manner, that will never marry. People sometimes that are in their second marriages that are living a celibate life for access to the graces that come from the sacraments. My grandmother, God bless her, widows and widowers. My grandmother lost my grandfather at 49 years old. I was about 3 months old. She lived the next 35 years as a widow. She never remarried. 35 years, I'm sure she had loneliness. And people will ask me sometimes, like, Father, are you lonely not having a wife? And I'll be honest, yeah, there are days. There are days you wish you had a family that you could come home to. Usually around the holidays when y'all are here at Christmas and everybody's going out and I'm going back to the rectory and just like watching, the Christmas story, waiting on the next Mass. That's when I kind of feel the weight of celibacy a little bit. But everybody has lonely days. You can talk to people in their marriages that are lonely, that have distant spouses. Usually the loneliness that I feel from celibacy is my own self-doing. It's just like, hey, you're not doing what you need to be doing as a priest. You're just being lazy. You're not praying. You're not doing what you should be doing as often as you should. You're just being lazy instead of lonely. And so celibacy is a great gift. And it's a gift to me for 3 reasons that I found. Number one, and it's important for us as Catholics to understand this, whether you're married or not. Number one reason for celibacy, it's Christological. One of the promises I make at ordination and all priests make is to conform our lives to Christ in all things. And guess what? Christ is a celibate male. That's why we don't have women priests. It's ontologically impossible. You have to be a man first. And celibacy is a discipline of the church. It's not a dogma. So if the Pope come out tomorrow and been like, hey, you know what? Priest, you can get married now. Well, you're breaking about an 1,100-year-old tradition in the Western church, but it's a discipline. It's not dogma, number one, but it's Christological. So we are to conform ourselves to life of Christ in all things. Number two reason, in an eschatological sense. Christ talks about in Matthew chapter 19, there's certain people that have foregone marriage for the sake of the kingdom of God. So we live a heavenly reality here on earth that we're going to all live in heaven. In heaven, there is no marriage. There is no giving and there is no taking in marriage. Nobody is married. Now, will you know your spouse? Yes, but you're not going to be married to him in the sense you are here. And so celibacy allows us to witness to the heavenly reality that we're all striving for in the here and now. Third reason is practical. And that's the thing that kind of gets, like, people look at a lot more than the first two, but it's practical. So you can call me at midnight on a Wednesday and say, Father, I need you at the hospital. We've had an accident, and I can be there. And I don't have to look over at my wife and go, hey, wake up, sweetheart. I need you to watch the kids. I got to go. It allows me to devote my entire ministry to you, to the parish, to its people, and not have duality where, it's 5 o'clock, I got to go home and take care of things. This isn't a job. It's a vocation. This is what I'm called to do. It's what priests are called to do. And I know so many people are fascinated by a celibate life and celibacy in the priesthood. But there's a lot of other people that are living that as well, and they're living it heroically, whether by choice or whether it's a cross for them or whatever it may be. And it allows us to be more Christ-like. It allows us to reach out to others, and it allows us to share a taste of heaven. So, young MC, I'm glad he brought the topic up. Didn't quite get it right, but he brought it up. So hopefully he and Paul can kind of work out the details one day.